said like
I
8
did say
times this
that.
week.
Yeah, I did. Like,
I'm just
well,
here for
at
the
least
intel.
twice. Cool. Yeah, so Snapshot 3 is dropping. Should we get a drum roll?
What is that
On
sound?
Tuesday, November 8th. What?
Woo!
Next week, okay.
What?
Man, choo-choo, come on, ride that train. Jump on
Yeah,
it. Let's
dude,
go.
come on. That's what Twitter Spaces is all about. We got to use these sound effects. There's literally a drum roll one. That's why I said that. I was just
Oh,
pressing the
nice.
drum over and over again. Cool. So yeah, we are super excited to bring that to you guys next Tuesday, which means we won't be doing a Twitter Spaces next Tuesday. We'll be doing the real deal, the full live stream.
Oh, baby.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, don't miss it. What else?
Well, let's talk about Snapshot 3. So it's dropping on Tuesday. What can we expect? We know we've been talking about advanced movement states. So we're getting in all that sweet movement ability, better ways to get around the proving ground, mantling, climbing, sliding, things that like listen, I noticed it in Snapshot 1 and 2 is like I learned about myself am a player who relies on advanced movement to get kills because I was getting dominated in Snapshot 1 and 2. And I feel like the internal playtest we've been doing for Snapshot 3, like it's faster to get around. It's more fluid. It's more tactical. I feel like I can make more strategic decisions. So I've been loving it. And I can't wait.
Yeah, it's been lots of fun just playing and just the past few weeks and knowing that this is going to be coming out. And so just having some of those fun experiences that we've been having in there with being able to move and to flank and to do stuff that you couldn't actually do really in Snapshot 2 with the Proving Ground. So Proving Ground itself has also been updated in addition to some of the new movement mechanics in there to accommodate them. So that'll be really exciting for everyone to check out and hop in there and see. It's not going to be the exact same space, just with some new stuff. It's actually got some new changes to it. So that is the exciting part of this service and the way that we're building this game is it's going to be changing. The whole thing is going to be changing as we go along. There's going to be additions, there'll be some subtractions, there'll be some changes, all that kind of stuff. So that to me is really fun about what we're coming out with next week is all the founders will be able to check it out and see it for themselves.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so Space Cowboy, what's up? You got some questions for us?
Hey, I was wondering, what is the comic book name DRCCSAPM exclamation mark stand for? What's the meaning behind that?
I don't think we're gonna give that one. I don't think we're gonna give that away yet.
It's
There's
like a store code or something.
it's special. It's special, and there's a lot of our conspiracy theorist members, our OG conspiracy theorist members, are going to love what's coming, and that's going to play into that. So can't spoil it, but it's a great question. I want to know how people pronounce it. That's what I want to know.
I feel like it's Dirk Sappum.
Dirk Sappum. That's what I say. I say Dirk Sappum.
Dirk Sappum.
But if you like the comics, you like collecting the comics, you are going to be very stoked for Snapshot 3 because a lot more comics make their appearance, and so I feel like that's going to start ramping into a lot of the way the new loot systems work. Because one, you can't stack 457 pistols anymore. Like weapons take up one slot. We're introducing some different inventory types, ammo types. Things that really change the core gameplay meta around how you loot and how you choose. We don't have the full backpack system yet, But we are one step further along that sort of looting journey that is going to make sort of looting substantial. And I think, comics play a pretty deep role in that, of like having something to collect that has like an extreme spectrum of rarity to it. So more than issue 1 coming down the pipe in Snapshot 3.
Will any of the loot items carry over or unlock something in future or final versions of the game?
It's not out of the question. There's definitely some what we consider throwaway loot in there right now, like stuff that's just in there to test the loot system. I feel like the Dirk Sappum issues are something that have a much longer tail. And then as these snapshots come out and more loot comes, you're going to start noticing some things that are a bit more permanent, a bit more final loot. So right now, like things like the floppy disks and the hand grips and the obelisk, unsure how much impact they will have in the final game. But it is highly possible, because I think, right now that's the only thing that exists. 6 months from now, that stuff's going to be very nostalgic, right? So it might find a way of resurfacing itself into a meta and a cool Easter egg way for people who have been in the game in these early days.
When is there going to be finite ammo, or ammo as a item you have to pick up?
Tuesday.
Declined to answer.
What? What?
Wait. So Becca's not answering. Rob is answering. I don't know which one's which.
Guys, amateur hour over here.
Am I just keeping secrets right now?
Yeah.
Okay, secrets.
It doesn't matter. It's okay. Forget you heard anything. Goodbye.
Secrets don't matter.
We're ending the spaces now. No, just kidding. TBA? Is that what we use? To be announced? Yes. To be announced.
Space Cowboy's not amused.
No, I love that.
You love it when we're all not on the same page. No.
It's a little bit of chaos.
I'm here to talk about Snapshot 3. That's what I'm here to talk about.
Spilling all the beans. It's cool. You know what we really need? Speaking of beans, we really need bacon. We need bacon up here. I see him in here. I see you, Darren.
I see him lurking.
He's lurking.
He's been very busy today. Every meeting I've been in with him, I've gotten the vibe that he didn't want to be in the meeting, and he was working on something.
He's like, when can I leave this so I can get back to my real work? No, we love you, requested. Darren. Oh, we got more requests. Okay, here we go. Oh, Darren has answers. What's up?
Oh, hey, what's going on, guys?
Hi.
Hey.
I put my Wacom down for a moment.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Pick it back up soon.
What do you got?
I mean, I don't know if I have anything compelling to tell you all.
What?
I enjoy being in meetings with Rob, and I love it when he runs them, so I can keep working.
Why don't you tell us what you're doing on your Wacom? Maybe people would be curious about that.
High-res weapon concept art.
Ooh.
Oh. Yeah. It's
okay.
I mean, I'm digging it. It's in a good spot.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see some of that.
Can you send me a preview in Slack right now?
Yeah, can I share my screen?
Just take a screenshot right now. Just send me
exactly
Slack. What you see.
He's literally messaging me at the same time.
Don't send it to Becca. Send it to me.
Send it to Rob.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello,
hey.
Ranchero. Ranchero. Hey. Oh, that one hurt.
That one hurt? Is that what you said?
You've got to roll your R's.
Oh, I can't do
yes,
that.
Sir. Queen del Arroyo.
Sí, Mr. Ranchero. Hi.
Hello. Hey, so I have a question about SS3. Is there any graphics, like art design or improvements in the map? Is it still like looking like as is right now, or SS3 has some improvements as far as like more lining or some changes, around the map?
There's definitely we've done a lighting path. There's some different lighting in there because we're experimenting a little bit there. We're trying to have the environment match more of the world that we're building. So you'll notice some changes there in the atmosphere as well as just the overall lighting. So the lighting is twofold. It's one to improve the gameplay, but also to go closer to what we're trying to accomplish from an overall setting and world building point of view.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, I want to be abundantly clear with people, just so expectations are clear. We are still very much focused entirely on gameplay right now. Snapshot 3, especially because it's all about movement states. Even Snapshot 4 is going to be very core gameplay stuff. And it's not until we start looking at like how does gameplay sort of intermingle with level design and level visuals and how the atmosphere of the level design impacts gameplay are we going to worry about arting stuff to the degree that like the player hideout is. And that's a deliberate choice, right? Because we want all the focus, all the feedback, all the attention and play testing from the variants from our players to be about the gameplay, right? Because it's very easy to get distracted by visuals if something like isn't final and doesn't look right. And so right now where we're really talking about like core gameplay and looting mechanics and weapon customization and movements, we really want people to just be focused on that. And that remains true for Snapshot 3. So as Quinn said, like the space definitely looks better because Howard's gone through and done some, amazing lighting tweaks and stuff like that that makes the space feel really good, but it is by no means arted yet.
That's a lot of piggybacking, dude.
Yeah.
That was awesome. That was a great answer though. Like that is very true statement there. We should definitely, be looking at just gameplay and worry about the artwork and all that stuff later on, I believe, So that's very true.
So
for
wait,
now,
which one was the great answer? I'm not sure. Mine or Rob's?
both of them,
Oh, okay,
because,
good. Thanks.
Because at least there was at least there was some improvement with lighting. That's awesome, but that was not the main focus. What Robert is saying, I think yes, we should focus more on gameplay and how how we use the weapon and the visuals. I believe, and how the character moves around the map. But yes, so you guys are adding more of when you're reloading a weapon, and is going to be more accurate to what it's doing, the movement, the maneuver of the hand and all that stuff. Like, you guys are tweaking anything about that, or?
Oh man! So here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big additions that we've had as a studio is the introduction of Brighton. Right, Brighton is one of our tech animators who has been leading the vision for true first person, right? Which means like you embody your character in all motions and actions, right? You're not just a camera that is floating around the space that has a view model. And so in Snapshot 3, you're getting the first taste of that system. And like, the most obvious things is like, hey, you're going to look down, you're going to see your body, you're going to see your feet. If you're climbing something, you're going to see your hands come up and do all that stuff. And so Snapshot 3 is our first step in the foundational elements of that true first person system that Brighton is pioneering. And also recently this week, we just got a dedicated full-time animator, Henry, who has joined the team. This is like, today is his 1 week anniversary. So he's getting in there and really going to work on all of the animations associated with that first person stuff. Brighton and Ryan and the team have done a lot of really great work on improving the animations as we get over into the first person stuff. But it won't probably be until Snapshot 3 that Henry really has proper time to get in there and do his magic that you're going to see like huge changes. But already with the true first person stuff, you're going to notice a very noticeable difference. But like that's the great thing on the animation side. The team has been rapidly growing since Snapshot 2. And so I'm just excited to see where it goes from here. Because that was our biggest hole.
Yeah, I'm going to be really interested too, because like even feedback from like players, because like for sure, like in Snapshot 1, Snapshot 2, at times it felt like, or like I would play it and it just, I would feel a little bit disconnected. And I wonder if players were feeling that too and like calling out like, hey, the art isn't done, but which is obvious, right? But I think it'll be interesting to see if animation helps that, you know, like, because like when I play Snapshot 3, I find myself, I get really drawn into the gameplay, and a lot of that stuff kind of melts away. Obviously, you know, that the intent is not that we the intent is that we continue to push the art. But I'll just be fascinated to see what players think about with all the new movement improvements. You know, just if that makes a big difference on like a quality scale as a player, you know.
Are you guys awesome? Are you guys adding in Snapshot 3 customization on the weapon, or that's later?
There's a little bit where we talked about this last week on our Twitter Spaces, where we're having some optic attachments for the rifles. So you'll be able to find those in loot when you go on the proving ground, and then you could attach those to different type of rifles. So that's just our first step into weapon customization, but look to that coming in future snapshots as we get more into that grand vision of what we're trying to do with weapon customization.
Is there new weapons in Snapshot 3?
There is not yet, and I like how you're really digging for the answers. And me and Rob and Darren are here to supply them, but Becca, she'll slap our wrist. So if she's not slapping, I'll start answering. So yeah, Snapshot 3, there's no new weapons yet, but we have more coming down the pipe.
I'm super excited though. I appreciate you guys answering and for hosting another, questionnaire.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and actually I have a question for the whole group, and there is definitely like no such thing as a silly question or suggestion. So we've been talking as a team about doing more focused topics for some of these Twitter spaces. Like obviously we love doing these AMAs. They're, chaotic and also casual and also, very free form and community focused where you guys can just step up and ask your questions. You guys can totally drop this in the comments also on this Twitter space, or just ask to be a speaker and say it verbally. But what topics do you guys care about the most? And it doesn't even just have to be limited to Dead Drop. It can be about the studio, about our approach, about game development in general, right? Like I know there's people that are, constantly wanting to know like, hey, what type of education would I need, or, certifications or whatever to become a gameplay engineer, or like what type of experience are you looking for? Things like that are also topics that we really care about as well. So it would be good for us to know from you guys, because I'm just looking at everyone in here today, and like a lot of you guys have been tuning into every Twitter space so far. What have we done? Like 5 so far? Yeah. So I know that this is kind of like a really core, engaged, like interested group, and that you guys are really passionate. So yeah. Okay. I see some requests. Okay. Let's see. Hey guys, how's it going? So how many speakers? Okay, yeah. So we're almost at the max of speakers, looks like. But yeah, so whoever wants to go first, if you guys have any ideas of future Twitter spaces you want to see, or other questions for us.
Oh, I didn't even realize I was speaking.
I'd like to go first. Actually, to be honest with you, not to be rude, but I was up here before all of you. So,
yes, that's true. It's true.
Yeah.
I can
I just didn't want to be rude, So, actually, so 3 things now that you brought that up. First thing is, I would really like to. So I'm that type of person where I like to poke the bear, so to speak, and just really be not so much controversial unless I need to be, but as far as like Midnight Society being so nascent and Dead Drop being the first game, what if this game does poorly in the market? I mean, are you obviously like that's an option, that's a possibility. So you're obviously going to come back from that and you're going to learn from your mistakes. I just like to hear what your guys' thoughts on, if you've even like considered that, or you're just like ego, nah, that's not going to happen, and just pushing forward with dead drop. And then two other things. I wanted to talk about extraction points. So are you level designing with extraction points as POIs, like those center points, and building out from them? Or they're just kind of like I'll just leave it at that. And then also, when you're crouch walking, that sound, the footsteps, it's shit. Like, I'm going to be honest. It's not good. It's not. I even put it in the
that
feedback.
Is very honest.
Yeah. Like when I'm crouch walking and I see myself my character moving side to side, there's a serious lag between the time I see my body moving and I hear the footsteps. Like that's not cool. So thanks.
So just so I understand, these are not suggested topics for future Twitter Spaces.
The first what I started with was
Okay. And then the question 2 and 3 were actual questions for this Twitter Space.
Yes.
I got you. All right, cool. So I kind of lost your second question, because the third one, all I heard about is how the audio is trash. So I could speak to that, and then I'll let Rob take the second question if he remembers.
The second question was about extraction points as POIs.
Okay, great. So to the audio, that's great. First of all, thanks for filling out these surveys and doing that, because that's really important for us. And so it's never hurtful for you to double down feedback in the written form and as well as in these Twitter Spaces. So thanks for that, and thanks for showing up. Our audio is definitely not near complete in what we want to be doing. We are getting ramped up there. We've got an excellent audio director on the team that's helping out. And it's just something that we are working through, but we have big goals and aspirations in order to achieve that we got to pull off. So we hear you loud and clear, and we're going to be working through all of our audio. It's going to be changing throughout the project, more getting better with each snapshot, less about they're going to be all over the place all the time, depending on the snapshot. I mean, sometimes things can happen like a bug or an issue, but for the most part, our goal is, especially on the audio side, audio is just going to continually to get better. That's music, that's sound effects, weapon effects, all those things are areas in which we are looking to improve upon with each snapshot.
I appreciate that response. I know you guys are focusing on mechanics more so than sound. I just, honestly, it's something that's just really stuck out like a sore thumb every time I drop into a match. So I needed to say something.
Yeah. No, man. Do not bite your tongue on that stuff. That's super important. So thank you.
I have the same feedback.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, we could talk after this then.
I also want to be able to know if somebody's above me, below me, or next to me.
Yeah.
But that is why we do these play tests. It's like, it's all, one step at a time, just like our attachments right now, right? In Snapshot 3, you're going to be able to find attachments, which is awesome, but you can only attach them to the rifles, right? Obviously, I want to attach them to everything. That's the next step. A lot of Snapshot 3 stuff is laying more foundational elements for the weapons system stuff so that we are one step closer to like a true weapons bench customization stuff. Even if we talk about the first question of like, what do you do if dead drop fails in a future thing? I just want to address that from a philosophical standpoint. I never go into anything assuming I'm going to fail. It's a pointless exercise in my mind. Like, you go in all in, right? Assume that you are going to knock it out of the park and do everything you can to knock it out of the park. Don't hedge against yourself. Don't bet against yourself, right? Go in, make the decisions that you think are smart, do it in a way that you think are compelling. And that's exactly what we've done with Midnight Society. That's exactly what we've done with Dead Drop. And I can tell you right now, Dead Drop is already a success in every sense of the word, right? Like, the fact that we are pioneering a brand new way of like developing a game openly, letting people come in early, experience it, give feedback, that has been a huge success. that has led to us being able to pour more and more resources, good partnerships, good investors come into Midnight Society to the point that we do not have to worry about just the success of a singular title, right? Because our plan for Midnight Society, our roadmap for Midnight Society is much bigger than just Dead Drop, right? We are building a platform. We are building an ecosystem, a society of players that is first going to be put to the test with Dead Drop. That because that is our first game, right? Dead Drop is our way to show like, hey, here is a first-person shooter, a AAA first-person shooter that leverages this type of development, an open development model where people give input early on and then eventually it's available to everybody. And then also introducing that whole UGC element where it's like, hey, now that we've created the foundation, how do you want to build upon it? Do you want to add to it? Do you want to expand it? Do you want to create your own original experiences that could leverage the platform in the same way? So, that sort of addresses your question is like, oh, what do you do if Dead Drop fails? That's looking at the game, right? I don't think it's going to fail. I think it's going to knock it out of the park. But what I think it's going to do is I think it's also going to set a foundation for like, hey, here's the base that we can expand on, the community can expand on, and here's the case study for how to develop AAA games in this super early access, early development, open development model that is going to inform our second game, expansions of this game, mods of this game created by the community. So I really see it as a launch pad more than I see it as the be all end all. It's not like we used to develop games where you develop games for 2 years in a bubble and then you release it and you hope people like it, right? We don't need to hope that people will like it because we are developing it openly. And if they don't like one aspect of it, then we change it. And if we release a feature and people are like, hey, that's fucking garbage, then we change it and we iterate on it and we make it not garbage, right? And that is actually why we do this open development process, is so that we're not shooting in the dark like we used to do. We're not going to invest $250 million and develop to 2 to 4 years to find out that everybody hates the way that we did UI or hates the way that we did, matchmaking or hates the way that we did whatever. We're going to try stuff. We're going to find out they hate it instantly. We're going to tweak. We're going to iterate. We're going to expand, and we're going to grow.
I love hearing that passion, and I appreciate you addressing that. And I did want to just, if you could just briefly go over my second topic was extraction points and how they, how you.
Interesting.
I
I wonder what
don't
that
know.
was.
That is interesting.
I'm at work right now. I can't go into Discord and get into the conspiracy theory. You got to give me 30 minutes, guys.
Yeah, but I don't know what that sound was, but I mean, it gets me thinking about POIs. It gets me thinking about that map design, and like right now, seeing what Brad is doing in the level design, and Quinn, you could probably speak to this greatly about like the fact that we have extraction points, right? The fact that we have points of interest outside of extraction points, but that just naturally having an extraction point where that players who are loaded up with loot are going to get out, right? That's their point of exit. And that it's a place that is going to get traffic by somebody at some point, most likely, introduces a really interesting question to how you design a level, right? Because you're not just thinking about it from the old school arena map shooter design where you're thinking about spawn points and lanes and sight lines, right? It adds this whole other layer of complexity to it. that I have really enjoyed as a bystander, as a non-level designer on the team, just watching sort of Quinn's thought process about it and Brad going in and implementing and iterating and trying stuff out as he's level designing that stuff right now. And so, Quinn, do you have any like thoughts on how that has been impacting how you guys have been approaching level design in a way that is different than how you used to do it on Gears of War or other games that are more arena shooter like?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots. I mean, I think that would actually be one of those when we were talking about topics for Twitter space. I think even going in a little bit more in depth into our level design process, any of these things we could talk about, I think would be a really fun Twitter space idea. We could make sure Brad is here to talk about what he's got going on. But just briefly, because I actually got to run to another meeting where we're actually talking more about weapons and new weapons and how they look and function, all that stuff. So I'm really excited to go to that. Wish you all can join, but you'll see them soon enough. But yeah, level design for a vertical extraction shooter like this is, again, on the extraction point, we want to make sure they're spread out, not necessarily evenly, because we're not making that type of arena style game where everything has to be equidistant at all times, 100% fair in the moment. We want to make sure that there's a variety of extraction points that pose different challenges for players. Some are up high, some are down low. We just didn't want that type of monotony of all the extraction points are at the bottom or all the extractions are at the top, because then that would create the same story of players when they're done with the match. It's like, oh yeah, I had to get to the top. Once again, I had to go to the top again. And we wanted a really good variety that created lots of stories from match to match, because that's the beautiful part about multiplayer games, unlike single player experiences, is that one match can be very different from the other match, and that's the replay value. And so for us, extraction points and where they are and placing them it's important for us to do that in a manner that's not just cookie cutter and the same no matter what. We don't have that general rule where they all have to be in a certain location. We are more or less trying to find them to be in unique, interesting, and sometimes challenging locations.
Yeah,
I respect that. I appreciate it. Thanks for answering my questions. I don't want to take up too much more time. So,
no. With that, though, I do have to bail, though. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Bye, Quinn.
Thank you, Quinn.
All right. Who else? Who else we got? The interesting thing, now that Quinn's got it, I can say stuff that I know he won't say. Is what I sitting in their design chats. What I really like is how they're sort of thinking about the diversity of those extractions and not just the location of them, but the fact of would it be cool to have extractions that require like a certain gear, right? It's like, oh hey, maybe it's like a really like OP extraction location, but in order to use it, you need to have a certain type of equipment, right? Like that's how we look at things like Skyhook and other things of like, oh, you need to find a loot item, basically a quest item, in order to successfully extract from that place or bring it in from the match to like diversify your options. And I always thought that was really interesting because I think, that's stuff that's going to come down to play testing and seeing how it feels and seeing if like people find benefit in it. But I like that they're thinking in those ways of like a diversity of types of ways to extract and like different requirements for each, right? Some are skill based, some are timing based, some might be gear based, having that sort of flexibility.
Hey, so I actually have a question for the feedback section. Kind of piggybacking on what Robert said about wanting that feedback, wanting to know when something's not good and needs to be changed. You guys have the snapshot debrief on the Midnight Society website in order to submit the feedback. But is there like bigger tools that we can probably see in the future, like some sort of like entry log on the society website, or maybe workbooks that the developers can make and like send it out to all the variants and be like, hey guys, these are changes we're introducing. Let us know what you think, and we can fill it out that way in order to submit the feedback. I know that the Twitter Spaces are pretty good, but a lot of people get a little bit of microphone shy.
Yeah,
So not everybody wants to, everybody wants to say something, but time is limited, and they don't build up the courage to do it. So, is there any kind of tools, better resources that we can get in the future?
Yes. So let me talk about a few specific things. One is like making that form more accessible. So Becca has been working with Kevin and the game team to get access to that form into the game build itself. So like you can play the build, and directly from the build you can launch the feedback form and provide feedback. That's going to increase the amount of people who do it, I think so, and then also just reduce the barrier to entry to providing feedback. Another thing that I'm looking at is there is a buddy of mine who has a company who they primarily focus on like player reporting and anti-cheat stuff that is built into the game. And what I'm talking to them about is like, hey, can we use that same system but expand it to like subjective feature requests, feature feedback, gameplay feedback, and not just about reporting players, but also reporting like game features or bugs or things like that. And so we are talking to them now about getting that program into the game, because that would be really cool. Because just like, if you come across a player you don't like, you can just hit report player and be like, yo, this dude's toxic or whatever. Also having that for gameplay feature. So if like you're crouch walking around and you're not digging that sound, or you think it's too loud, or you think it's the timing's off, you could just pull up a menu, be like, hey, this moment, right? And then I think that's really interesting, because once we have that system in place, we can look at like, oh, hey, can we set it up to like auto capture the last, 30 seconds of gameplay, or auto screenshot something. And I think it gives us some really interesting hooks to empower the people who are playtesting to like not only have more ways of providing feedback, but also ways of attaching context to that feedback, right? Because it's one thing to say like, oh, hey, I think this, like for example, like you were just like, oh, hey, the crouch audio, not you who just asked this question, but I don't know how to say your name, JCO Smos, was like,
Jay
oh,
Cosmos.
hey,
it's Cosmos.
Cosmos. Oh, sorry, JC. Cosmos. Jay Cosmos.
I mean, it used to be Jayco, so I get it. That's why I put a 0 there, so I can see that. Yeah.
So he's like, oh, the crouching audio sucks, right? And the first, like, whenever I hear anything sucks, I immediately have more questions. So, like, what sucked? Was it the audio of it? Was it the timing of it? Was it like the was it too quiet, too loud? Was it the actual audio sound effect itself? So there's a bunch of contextual questions that come with like adjectives, right? And so like I think a system like that is going to help. So as I always do, the short answer is yes. The long answer is exactly what I just said.
When do you get a t-shirt that just says that on it?
I know.
Do we need to give that to you for like the holidays? Is that a holiday gift for you?
Yeah.
Hey, Helmet.
And to sort of elaborate a little bit more on when, maybe Snapshot 5 is when that stuff will come online, because I feel like it's a lot of that stuff is tied into specifically the tool I'm talking about is tied into the voice chat stuff, like when prox chat and all that stuff comes in. So hopefully, like if we get it in sooner, maybe some version of it sooner, that'd be great. But because we are trying to implement this third-party tool into our code, there's a little bit of biz dev back and forth we have to do before we get it into the build.
Awesome, thank you.
Next person up, or
sure.
All right. So I didn't want to interrupt you if you have more.
No, I'm done.
So first of all, as always, like I like to say, I really appreciate all the hard work you and the team at Midnight Society do. So thank you for that. It's just cool to be a part of the process and see it all. So thank you all for that. I hope you all are having a great week. My question is more design philosophy based. This is probably bigger picture, later on down the road type stuff. But so I'll present the question and add some context. So the question is, how much based in realism will the design philosophy be for Dead Drop when it pertains to weapons and gear? So the context of that would be, if Call of Duty is rooted in realism, real military-based weapons, and let's say on the other extreme end of that for a shooter, Destiny 2 is way more fantasy sci-fi based, where would you put Dead Drop in that mix? And more specifically, what I'm really asking is, when it comes to weapons and gear, are y'all intending to experiment with sci-fi things that are maybe futuristic or something that doesn't necessarily exist? Like an example would be in Destiny 2, there's a weapon called a fusion rifle, and really it's this like charge up burst type weapon that, you know, if there is anything in real life that exists like that, we probably don't know about it. So like where is Midnight Society's vision for design philosophy when it comes to weapons and gear in that context?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, to give you some context of how we thought about it back in the Call of Duty days, and I'm talking about my Call of Duties, not the current Call of Duties, we always said that we were not realistic, we were authentic, right? So back then we focused on the weapons and the way soldiers move and the way they communicate was authentic to real life, but was not meant to be realism, right? Because normally in games, realism means things like your weapon jams and things break and like, you know, gameplay systems that are more in like simulation shooters. So I just wanted to like sort of align on the terminology that we generally use.
I think that's what I meant, by the way.
Yeah. And so like so for us on Dead Drop, we try to be authentic, but authentic to the alternate future of the 80s, right? And this comes from a design standpoint, from like how they operate, but also from an art direction standpoint from Darren, which is like we look at our world as like, imagine the world today, 2020B or 2022B in our current day, but as if like the 80s never ended, or the 80s progressed in a way that sort of went more lo-fi, like the 80s movies directors thought the future was going to look like and not how it actually looked like, right? Because in real life, in our reality, technology advanced and computing and everything got smaller, right? Like everything got smaller and more condensed, and superconductors got to the point that we could do things in really small casing. Where when we looked at how technology evolved in the future in 80s movies, everything got bulkier, everything got big, everything got like chunky and heavy, right? Because computers started getting added to everything like guns. But in order to do that, we could only imagine computing systems being like big, right? And so that's really what we look at. But even though, like, from a artistic art direction standpoint, visually they look like these chunky, blocky, like lo-fi, whatever. And we don't like to use the term like sci-fi because we think we're more like lo-fi, not cyberpunk, but more like gritty realism, but they operate in authentic ways, right? So we're okay adding something that feels futuristic or feels not real to this world, as long as we can portray it in a way that operates authentically, right? So, for example, if you're going to have something like a charge rifle, not saying we are, but if you're going to have something like a charge rifle, then you have to have some sort of power source or some sort of operation mechanism that makes that charge rifle make sense. And sort of is constrained by similar ways that other weapons are constrained, right? So it's like, all right, if that weapon shoots projectiles, if that just throws lead down range, right? How is it operated? Is it a gas powered, weapon system? Is it a fusion weapon system? Like, we're fine sort of introducing those types of things to the weapon systems as long as they live in some sort of authentic reality, is our general thinking of it right now.
Oh, thank you for clarifying that. I'll just hold out hope for a Terminator 2 future, horrible future milliwatt laser rifle or something.
You know what I think is like really cool is if you look at like and like the design that Darren just DM'd me in Slack of this shotgun, like has it as well, but also the rifle A, the first rifle we introduced in Snapshot 1 has it. If you look at the little design details that they're putting into the weapons, like we always had this sort of element of like these weapons are like based on a weapon that used to exist in the 80s but has been upgraded and modified by somebody, and not always like and modified in a way that isn't like a professional weapon manufacturer modifying it, right? It's like, hey, some dude took that in his garage and soldered this piece on and wired in this sort of ammo counter. And then like, there's all these like homebrew weapon modification look to everything. And I love that combined with like the 80s blocky aesthetic. I think adds a lot to the sort of personality of the weapons that we're creating.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I'll definitely want to give it to somebody else so they can ask some questions. So thank you guys so much.
Can I add a quick comment on that?
Sure.
So I think that's super cool. And I did a lot of research into like, just because I was interested in that like whole future from the lens of the 80s thing. I did a bunch of research into those type of weapons. And in the 80s, they had like the Advanced Combat Rifle program, which the government poured lots and lots of money into to try and figure out what's going to be better than the M16, what's going to double the range, what's going to double the effectiveness of that weapon. And they came up with all these crazy ideas like caseless ammunition, which you see in the G11 and then in the Aliens movies. And they also came up with flechette rounds and duplex rounds and all sorts of crazy, interesting ideas. So I think that would be something that's like ripe for exploration with the dead drop world. And I'd love to talk with you guys more about that, just the details of that if you're interested.
Yeah, I think that stuff's great. I think looking at like the trajectory, like the military was going in the 80s would bear a lot of fruit, right? Be really interesting. Because like, you know, what ends up happening is you have like these R&D departments sort of developing, you know, based on their best guesses of like, oh, here's where we think technology is going and warfare is going. And then that gets derailed by actual warfare, right? It's like, because that's what went from like us developing these ammo types to introducing the SCAR, right? Because it's like, oh, hey, we're actually spending all our time fighting in the desert and our weapons are breaking down because of the sand. Like, can we develop a rifle system that requires less cleaning or maintains better in these environments? And it's always, I think it's really interesting to look at like, well, what if they kept going in the way they were going? And what can we incorporate from that, you know? So I think that stuff's really interesting.
Cool. Quick question. So we have a couple people waiting to speak, but the speakers are like the spots are full. We have only 10 spots. Does anyone mind? Anyone that's already asked a question, could you maybe step down from the podium? So we just need 2 people to leave actually. That would be awesome. So I can let these folks in. Okay, thank you, everybody.
I'm actually pretty quick. It's related to your question. When you're talking about extraction points, have you considered looking at the PvE aspects of, say, one of them being guarded by various PvE units? Like, what kind of approach have you come across for that aspect?
Yeah, so right now the biggest PvE element that we have are going to have in game is the cleaners, right? And the cleaners play a lot of important functions in sort of keeping gameplay moving, keeping sort of the importance of loot high, the importance of like looting quickly and being decisive. We have talked a little bit about how they sort of escalate in terms of like their loadout and their abilities based on certain situations. And I think, how they deal with sector shutdown will play into that. How exactly, I don't know yet, right? Because basically how it will eventually work once we're in the tower, keep in mind right now in the build, you're in the proving ground, right? You're not yet in the tower. But when you get in the tower and we start introducing the cleaners and the PvE elements, there's a lot of stuff we can play around with, which is how do the AI behave when a sector is fully operational versus when the sector starts to shut down and extraction points start opening up, right? Like, do we make them more aggressive? Do we make them start patrolling the extraction points more often than they did before, right? Like, I could imagine a logic system where, before the sector shuts down, they're sort of just roaming around doing their normal job as cleaners in the refiner states. But the moment that section shutdown is activated, then extraction points start opening up, their priorities shift, right? So that is just to give you a glimpse into our thought process. But in terms of actual decisions and decision-making trees that the AI make, that all is in development right now. I will give you a peek into the curtain. Right now, we're just worried about making sure they can climb ladders and go up ramps and identify targets. Once all that is working, which it is right now, then we start introducing we start layering on the more advanced logic states of like, okay, now that you've identified that and figured out how to navigate yourself to the body, like, what do you do? Like, what do you prioritize, right? Do you prioritize other combatants? Do you prioritize, getting the body out of there, this and that? But I totally hear what you're saying. And I think the natural progression of that is like, because AI, when you're building AI, all you're doing is building, and I say all you're doing as if it's simple. It is not simple at all. But basically, what you're doing is you're building a tree of decision-making priorities, right? It's like, oh, this happens, so I can either do this or this. I'm going to do this for these reasons, and creating like weights that help that AI make that decision based on the current situation. And the more sort of weights and context you can give to that decision making, the more realistic and authentic those AI feel. Which is why, the advancement of AI really comes down to just how much time and resources can you put into a given decision tree.
Okay. The one game that kind of comes to mind, it's not even a shooter, is Shadow of Mordor. That series, how when you get killed, they tend to evolve. It's kind of something that stuck out to me.
Right, that's the one where they have like the nemesis system, where they remember you and they learn from their encounter with you, and it sort of keeps this sort of metadata based on their experience with you. Yeah, that was cool.
So we're starting to get a little short on time, so let's let people who haven't asked a question yet ask a question.
I know Adam started to speak.
Yeah, I'm about it here. All right. Thanks for all you guys doing everything you guys do. You're great. It's first time and you guys are doing good at it. There's always work steps, but I just got a few questions. As developers, what are some of the biggest challenges you guys are facing, like audio design, graphic design, player movement, etc.? I know we got the second question is I know we got the vehicle right now. Is there any other means by transportation, air, water, maybe even portals or something like that maybe transfer to the tower or something like that?
Yeah, so I'll answer it one at a time. I think, what are the biggest challenges? Our biggest challenge is changes on a snapshot by snapshot basis, right? Like in snapshot 1, we didn't have any animators on staff. So obviously animating anything was a big challenge for us. Now that we have animators on staff, that is not a challenge for us anymore. Now we're looking at more complex issues like the AI stuff, which we have Dave Walker sort of dominating right now, right? So Dave's like working on the AI systems for the cleaner. So that's no longer a challenge for us. My focus now has shifted to more bigger picture stuff of like the UGC platform and how that plays into the game and what that means for how we build structures, right? So we're looking at a lot of foundational things of like, not just what do weapons do, but how do we build weapons? How do we build characters? How do we build levels? So that we can build them in a way that we can open up that ability to our community and they can build stuff the exact same way we do. And so that is our biggest hurdle right now. And a lot of the meetings that we're doing is like making sure that we're structuring our workflow and our pipelines and our asset creation setup in a way that can be publicly used and digestible. And that's super into the weeds and probably, boring, but it is like the sort of the big thing that I'm thinking about right now, because like the gameplay stuff is coming online. And I think we're at a really good point from a hiring standpoint that we have all the core disciplines filled except VFX. VFX is, if you know any VFX artists that are dying to make a, industry defining first person shooter, let me know. Because like that is our big hiring need right now. But other than that, across the other verticals, like we're pretty covered, so we don't have any big stress points. The second question, which is vehicles, yes. So the vehicle system is key to the core loop of the game, right? Like building that vehicle, customizing that vehicle. Right now, it is a car. Originally, when we were talking about this, like with Doc and talking about like what we could do with this vehicle, he was like really gung ho on like a helicopter. So I think expanding that vehicle beyond just cars is a high probability. But I think first we want to get like the vehicle system stuff in there, get people playing it, see how they feel about it, see where we can take it, and then based on that feedback, decide how much you want to expand it, right? Because Quinn has a really good saying that I've started using, which is we can do anything, but we can't do everything, right? And so how we decide what are the anythings that we are going to do is based on you guys, right? So we'll put in something like a vehicle system, but it's really up to you to tell us what comes next, right? It's like, because we could do anything, but what are we going to do is going to be decided, like, do we want more types of vehicles or do we want more types of weapons, right? Because sometimes it does come down to that either or, because we only have so many artists or so much time or so many resources. And so step one, let's get the vehicles in, see if you fucking love it. And if you're like, this is great, I love building that car, can I build a helicopter? I'd be like, all right, sure. Let's start adding in pieces for helicopters.
You answered my question. Thanks again, guys. I'm gonna let up to the next person.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, one more because I gotta go pick up the kids from school.
Hello, guys.
Hey, Smokey.
I'm from Italy, so sorry for my English. I'm a Counter-Strike veteran. I've been all my life around competitive games, and I just wanted to ask if this game is gonna have some sort of competitive relation or rank system, or no, because players who plays type A games, they have this competitive soul, and I just want to know about this, if it's gonna be some type of competitive game.
Yeah. So will it be, so we've talked about this since like the day one, right? Which is like, I don't think it's our job to make a competitive experience. We're going to make a really compelling first person shooter. And then if people play it and they think they can go competitive in it, then they're going to let us know. Right. And luckily we are well integrated with, esports orgs like FaZe and Optic and a bunch of others. We have a lot of founders and variants who are competitive players like yourself, or members of esports organizations or CEOs of esports organizations that are in our ear constantly talking about what we could do with the competitive scene. So our goal first is like, let's just create a killer shooter and then let the competitive community let us know how it could be competitive. Right? We'll listen to that. And then if we support that, it would be a dedicated mode. So it would be its own thing that has its own rule sets, its own balancing, the ability to turn on, turn off certain things. But the goal was not to make the core game like competitive in nature. It is naturally competitive because you're competing against other people, but you know what I mean. And like the competitive scene would be its own dedicated thing.
That was really nice. Yeah. No, I understand the core game, but I just, in my name, pro of Counter-Strike, so I'm looking into that, and I like to see that introducing in the game at some point.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks, man.
All right. That about does it. Sorry if you guys have some questions that didn't get answered today, but as always, feel free to drop them in the comments, and we will try to answer them as soon as we can. But yeah, thanks for showing up, and yeah, I mean, again, like if you guys have any ideas for topics on things that you specifically want like a dedicated Twitter Spaces for, you know, we can get more guest speakers from the team up here and things like that. So yeah, let us know what you want to hear. And we will see you on the 8th.
Great. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.